We're looking at a video from Populous about how to write a lovable jerk. Any of you guys writers? I'm something of a writer myself, hobbyist, but a channel, a video about writing, how to write a lovable jerk, starting with the lovable jerk himself. So we shall see. All right. I think it'd be a pretty interesting watch. So let's pause the roses, pause the music. Here we go. All right. All right, ready for this one? Hopefully. All right, let's give her a go. Thanks for looking, Pikachu's. I appreciate it. All right. From Populous, How to Write a Lovable Jerk. Here we are. 3, 2, 1, go.
This is Kuzco. This is him getting carried up a flight of stairs. This is him getting spoon-fed every bite of his meal. And this is him ordering a peasant to be thrown out of his palace because he threw off Kuzco's groove. Kuzco is, by design, one of the biggest jerks to ever come out of Disney. But if you've watched The Emperor's New Groove, you also know that Kuzco is awesome.
I didn't do anything. Somebody's throwing stuff. Are you going to build a fire or what?
As the centerpiece of what might be Disney's funniest movie ever, Kuzco embodies everything that should make a character hateable, but does so in a way we can't help but love. So what can we learn from Kuzco and characters like him if we want to know how to write a lovable jerk?
Yeah, characters that are lovable jerks are some of the best kind out there. You have Kuzco, of course, from Emperor's New Groove. You have Handsome Jack from Borderlands 2, another really popular one. And there's Gaston from Beauty and the Beast, right? All these people who are just so full of ego, so full of themselves, but it like overflows into being a kind of base, So you're like, oh wow, I actually kind of like them. Let's keep going.
Kind of like a jumbo shrimp, a lovable jerk is an oxymoron. For them to work, you have to find the sweet spot in a careful balancing act. If they're too much of a jerk and not lovable enough, they'll scare off the audience before the story really even starts. Another good way to scare off your audience is interrupting them with a sponsor. Which reminds me, something big is coming to Raid Shadow Legends.
Raid Shadow Legends!
A major crossover with a famous IP
Raid
who
Shadow
I know
Legends.
that
What would be about
This is a globally recognizable, culturally iconic IP coming in the form of a free new legendary champion, but only through my link in the description, and you need to act now.
Of
and
course.
on that note of legendary champions, Ultimate Death Knight is back and free for new players, which is like playing basketball for the first time and having LeBron James as a teammate. Ultimate Death Knight sponges hits like they're nothing, shields and heals his allies, and debuffs his opponents. If that sounds overpowered, it's because it is, and it's completely free with the code UDKING. Legendary champions are like never free, so you really don't want to miss this window. What I like most about Raid Shadow Legends is the super smooth and rewarding progression. I was a little skeptical that there would be massive pay-to-win walls in the way, but I found my team quickly snowballing from a couple ragtags into a force to be reckoned with. If you haven't started playing yet, then what are you waiting for? Click my link in the description or scan my QR code to get amazing bonuses available only via my link. You'll immediately get a huge starter pack with the epic champion Gaelic, and once you reach level 15, which I got to in like an hour of playing because my team was so stacked, you get another free starter pack with the epic champion Zargala. But while epics are great, legendaries are where it's really at. With one of 6 available promo codes, new players can unlock a free legendary champion of their choosing. The choices include Green Warden Ruark, Alice the Wanderer, Tunarok, Sun Wukong, Tholan Foulbeard, and LeBron James. Ultimate Death Knight. If you can't tell, I highly suggest picking Ultimate Death Knight. Once you're in the game, you can find me under the name Squamp and join me in the Kraken. Thanks again to Raid for sponsoring this video. Now let's get back to writing lovable jerks. Knowing the importance of keeping an audience invested, some of the great storytellers of the world have converged on the idea that empathy is fundamental when creating an effective character. This is because empathy is the one true factor that protects a story from the two-word question of doom. Who cares? If a writer wants the audience to stick around, they have to make them care. Keep in mind, this was before Subway Surfer clips were invented. This principle, the empathy one, not the Subway Surfers one seems so obvious that it can be hard to imagine any writer failing at it. In reality, unintentionally dislikable characters are a problem that even world-class writers can struggle with.
Slagate! Get up here and do your job! Are you deaf? I said take care of them!
You probably recognize both that voice and...
Was that Woody's original personality? Oh my gosh. Oh man. Yeah, if they had written Woody to be like that, nobody would have liked them. They would have been rooting for Buzz instantly. Subway Surfers? Yeah, I know Pikachu's. It's if you unironically enjoyed the game, right? It wasn't just, here's iPad distraction. Oh, yeah. Yeah, nowadays kids have such poor attention span that, you need good characters to keep them engaged a bit. Of course, excuse me, good characters already exist, but like, oh my gosh. But yeah, if you're writing someone who's a jerk, you do need to be very careful. Because in the original Toy Story, Woody's a bit of a jerk. He's a leader. He like, he needs the respect of the other toys because he's Andy's favorite, so which gives him a bit of an ego. But if he was yelling at Slinky, like, no, nobody would like him then. Nobody would. My gosh.
That character art as Woody from Toy Story, but you certainly don't recognize that attitude. That's because this Woody is a jerk. He's arrogant, cruel, selfish, unreasonable, and just doesn't work. In fact, he almost doomed the entire Pixar studios. After watching these reels, the Disney executives nearly pulled the plug on the entire project.
Yeah,
Fortunately,
rightfully so.
the writers switched him up to be more likable and saved Toy Story in the process, but this just goes to show that creating empathetic characters is as challenging a task as it is important. Had they kept that narcissistic, tyrannical jerk version of Woody, Pixar as we know it never would have existed.
Yeah.
Because no
Good-
audience
good
would want to
call
stick
writing on
around.
there.
But wait a
Goodness.
second. Why does a narcissistic, tyrannical jerk sound familiar right now?
Emperor Cusco?
So you mean to tell me that Disney deemed Woody as unusably bad, completely redid his character, but then decided to run it back 5 years later with Cusco? And it worked? What could they have possibly done differently with Cusco?
I think what they did differently is because Woody, he's designed to look like a cowboy, right? And people have this image of cowboys where they're like, Wild West, duels of honor at high noon, blah blah blah. When people picture a cowboy, they don't picture a cowboy yelling at his dog to do his job, right? But he's introduced to us as an emperor, and from media we know that rulers are on a different plane than cowboys. So yeah, in that vein, it's easier to see him starting off as a jerk compared to a leader we should be rooting for. And yeah, exactly. He's what, like, they said he was just turning 18 in the story, and he was very spoiled his entire life. So it makes sense for him to be that way. And if something's explainable and it makes sense, it's easier to understand. But for Woody, he's a toy. He was created as a sheriff with years of experience from day one, created as a toy. But he didn't really like earn any of those chops, right? He didn't earn the right to be cruel in his leadership. So I think that's a big difference right there, right? We'll see.
That made his jerkiness work, while Woody's was a threat to all of their jobs. To figure that out, let's look at two near identical moments with one major difference between them.
Oh, yeah, well, yeah, there you go. Whoa! Whoa! What? What are you, what's everybody looking at? What? Hey, he slipped. I tried to, I couldn't hold it. It was he slipped.
Oh my gosh.
I'm sorry, but you've thrown off the Emperor's groove.
You were saying?
Did you catch the difference? After being caught throwing Buzz out the window, Woody denies any wrongdoing. We know what he did, the characters know what he did, and he obviously knows what he did too. But for the life of him, he can't own up to his action. Meanwhile, when Cusco has the elderly peasant thrown out the palace window, he doesn't just own it, but carries on as if it was expected. And it doesn't stop there. The writers kept their foot on the ass, see what I did there, and continue to pile on instances of over-the-top assholeness. In fact, in the very next scene, Cusco basically emotes on the old guy with his entire squad of guards. Strangely enough, this over-the-top assholeness ends up making his actions more palatable to the audience rather than
honestly, given Disney's big deal with Epic and Fortnite, it's only a matter of time before we get a Cusco skin, and we can have him take the L on everybody. It's only a matter of time, people.
repellent. Even though he is completely antithetical to the idea of an empathetic character, I can't help but find I'm immediately invested in watching Cusco's story. But why does his jerkiness draw us in rather than scare us off? Well, this brings us to the first principle of writing a lovable jerk, which I would call distance. Even without thinking about it, an audience will always be judging a character. Because of this, the common path to creating empathy is to appeal to the audience's judgments and create a morally strong, relatable, likable character. For instance, look no further than Emperor's New Groove's Pacha. Right off the bat, we see him help out the same peasant that Cusco had thrown out. Super good, moral deed, which we'd like to think we do too. So the gap between us and Pacha is relatively small, and because of this alignment, we like Pacha. It's not rocket science. But when you're only relying on moral alignment to create a lovable character, if you don't perfectly hit home with the audience, you'll you'll be capped at likable rather than lovable. Potch is great and all, but he's completely overshadowed by characters with much worse morals. This is why I propose that to write a lovable jerk, you need to reject the audience's morals entirely. Contrary to the intuitive process of closing the gap between the character and the audience, I'd suggest that writing a lovable jerk requires maximizing the gap, aka increasing distance.
I was always taught that there was some good in everyone, but you proved me wrong.
You know, I think that's a really great way of putting it. Um, Using an example, Handsome Jack for Borderlands 2. Handsome Jack is a really great villain. Completely full of ego, completely full of himself, utterly convinced that he's the hero who's going to save Pandora. You know, the CEO of the mega corporation Hyperion, and he does unspeakable acts throughout the entire game. You know, it's just villain doing villain things. You know, it's an old game, but I'm not gonna spoil too much of it. But basically, there is a distance between him and the player too in that way. You know, because how many of us are CEOs, right? Not many of us here. But I wonder if this guy's gonna bring it up. But there is something that Jack has that does give him a degree of empathy. Of course, we learn about it's a bit of a spoiler, but Handsome Jack's daughter, right? And Snape's a good example too, right? Yeah. Especially later on when we learn why Snape is the way he is, right? And Snape there's empathy for Snape in his own way too. That was like a single act of love. Doesn't fully redeem him. But allows us to understand him. Yeah, we're on the right track here. And Snape also has distance from the audience because he's a professor, right? A teacher, and there should be distance between a teacher and a student, and the reader through Harry's perspective also being a student. Yeah, I think that's a really great way of putting it.
Oh, boo-hoo. Now I feel really bad. Bad llama.
Make them so grand, so over the top, so foreign that nobody in the audience even bothers casting judgment in the first place. And one way to create distance is embellishment.
Oh, embellishment's a good one. Oh, speaking of continuing the Borderlands example for Handsome Jack, yeah. So the game's like, how old is it now? I guess it's okay to just spoil some details. Spoilers for Borderlands 2 if you haven't played it. But yeah, we learned that Handsome Jack's daughter, her name's Angel. Angel is the voice who's been speaking to you since the beginning of the game, and we learned that she was forced to work for Handsome Jack to betray us all, right? Jack is also using her powers because she's a siren. Sirens have special powers in this universe, and Angel manages to get the player to come to her chambers to end her. And during the whole battle, Handsome Jack completely flips the script. He's no longer arrogant, funny, hilarious. He is angry. He's furious, begging you not to do this. He loves his daughter, but he's also using her too in a way. So understanding that while he genuinely loves his daughter, he loves himself more. So that creates a sort of distance in its own way too. Yeah, if this guy would use Handsome Jack as an example, I think it would be just about the same there. And embellishment too. Let's see what he means by embellishment.
Okay if you stare.
Just like The Emperor's New Groove, the Lego Batman movie is centered around one of those elusive, lovable jerks that we're trying to get to the bottom of. And just like The Emperor's New Groove, the story introduces us to said jerk with an over-the-top song and dance, meant to embellish his larger-than-life ego. The embellishments don't stop there, though. For example, how many Batmans do you know would celebrate a successful mission by making it rain Batbucks on the local orphans? Forget Batmans, how many characters do you know at all would do anything like that? There's definitely one that comes to mind, and his name is Kuzco. And while Lego Batman isn't as malevolent of a jerk as Kuzco, it takes a real jerk to have us pitying the villain who just tried to blow up Gotham.
You mean nothing to me.
But despite the cruel words, it's hard to stay mad at a guy who sings about his abs and shreds electric guitar while fighting crime. The writers use his larger-than-life ego to create enough distance where we, can't really take him seriously. A character who nails this concept is actually another Will Arnett character, Job from Arrested Development. Job, often mistaken as Gob, is a Segway riding illusionist who got kicked out of his own magic club. I feel like that speaks for itself. This character can basically do anything he wants, and I'll give him a free pass because he's such a larger-than-life, embellished jerk that it'd be a waste of effort to cast any judgment. When I say embellishment, though, I don't mean that writing a lovable jerk means they have to be unrealistic. I know that Kuzco and Lego Batman and Job are inherently ridiculous characters, but the principle of distance doesn't mean they have to be fantastical. It just means they have to be unfamiliar. One character that comes to mind is BoJack Horseman, who's the third Will Arnett character. Wow, I guess he has a type. BoJack is a very well-written jerk, and ignoring his horse face, he's also very true to life. But while the story works because of the realism, he isn't lovable in a way a character like Kuzco is. However, this isn't because he's realistic. It's because they didn't want BoJack to be lovable. Instead, they wanted to make him feel familiar and make his shortcomings hit harder and make his wrongdoings more repulsive. On the contrary, though, perhaps the quintessential lovable jerk is TV's most realistic jerk too, Tony Soprano. I understand that saying I love Tony Soprano might make me seem like a psychopath to anyone who's watched the show, but come on, you'd be lying to yourself if you say you didn't love Tony on your first watch through. What's special about Tony is that he proves that realistic doesn't have to mean familiar. When I say realistic jerk, I'm basically referring to the accuracy of the personality disorders that the writers portrayed within Tony. People a lot smarter than me have generally agreed that The Sopranos nails the character psychology, meaning Tony's not just a jerk, he's a scientifically backed jerk. At the same time, though, much like Kuzco, Tony has a sort of larger-than-life persona to him that we don't really see anywhere else. Just for one example, to prove a point to his daughter Meadow, Tony exploited her best friend's father's gambling addiction until he had to give Tony his son's car, which Tony then gifted to Meadow as an ultimate asshole power move. Imagine your friend picking you up for school one day, and then the very next day you're picking them up in that exact car because your dad thinks it would be funny. That is the kind of throw a peasant out the window and then carry on with your dance level of jerk. The cover a bunch of orphans in your merch, but God forbid you actually adopt one level of jerk that we need these characters to strive for. They need to be so magnificently jerky that they are completely unfamiliar to our normal lives. And don't just take it from me. Even Tony's in-show therapist, Dr. Melfi, who knew very well that he was a murderous sociopath, couldn't resist the intrigue of him because he was a truly unfamiliar kind of jerk. But as I've sort of implied, distance isn't just achieved through what they do. It's also about how they do it, which ties into another principle of writing a lovable jerk. Make them authentic. At first glance, creating a larger-than-life jerk might be seen as a way to get us invested solely in their downfall, meaning characters like Kuzco and Batman are so blatantly obnoxious that we won't be satisfied until we see them fail. This is similar to a principle I pointed out in my video about writing cowardly heroes. The writer
that's another good point, there's another reason why we love jerks. We love to see them fail. It makes you think of, what was it? Alistair from Has Been Hotel, right? He's also a bit of a lovable jerk in his own way. The fandom's favorite, more people know about Alistair than they do about Has Been Hotel, right? But Alistair also has the ego the size of a planet, and oh my gosh, I'm completely blanking. What was I gonna say? I was in the middle of something like. Yes, a comeuppance. But throughout all of season one, right? Alistair has this massive ego. He taunts Lucifer right to his face. And he's convinced that he's the most powerful demon ever. So in the season one finale, when he goes against Adam, and at first, Alistair has the edge, right? He has the edge. But does he get what he wants? Well, no, he didn't, because we learn more about his deal in season two. But in the season one finale, yeah, where he thinks he has the upper hand against Adam. But the second Adam got serious, he completely bodied Alistair, and everyone's like, yes, that's what you get, Alistair, that's what you get. Even though they love him, they love watching him fail and and get his butt handed to him even more. Yeah, so you want to keep watching his characters to see them fail at last and go yes when they finally fail.
Introduce those characters through a strong injustice, which hooks us in to see them make it right. However, I think there's something different going on with lovable jerks. With the cowardly heroes, our empathy to them was contingent on them righting their wrongs. In Edge of Tomorrow, it wasn't until Private Cage died presumably thousands of times before he finally started to grow on me. Meanwhile, a truly lovable jerk is lovable from the jump. And it isn't in spite of their jerkiness, but because of it. With Kuzco, in the first chunk of the movie, there isn't a single line of dialogue where he even remotely tries to be nice. After firing his advisor Yzma, all he can focus on are her wrinkles and imperfections.
What is holding this woman together?
And after being turned into a pathetic, powerless llama, he still dismisses Pacha, his only possible ally, for being a peasant. We can see a similar pattern in Batman as well. Alfred extends a metaphorical helping hand to him, he turns it down because he can't fathom the idea of needing anyone but himself. When he accidentally adopts Robin, which is insane in its own right, he then tells Alfred to return him to the orphanage like he's some t-shirt that isn't quite his size. Despite the disgusted reactions they get from people around them, it doesn't slow these characters down one bit, because why should it? Instead of backing down, they shamelessly own it. and it works so well in creating a perverted version of empathy.
Hey, kid.
Yes, sir.
You're super nimble, right?
I sure am.
And small.
Very.
And quiet.
When I desire to be.
And 110% expendable.
I don't know what that means, but okay.
Great.
When characters are written with distance, audiences can give them a pass
gosh,
to
we
do
need
really
to show
shitty
Sean
things
that
because
video.
it's clear the characters aren't even meant to be
You know
judged.
what? I've never seen the Lego Batman movie. They really turned Batman into a jerk in that one. That's so funny. Why would he call his own sidekick expendable? Okay, we definitely need to watch it sometime. We definitely need to watch it. Oh, Crowley from Supernatural. Oh, that's a really good one, yeah. Oh god, it's been ages since I last seen Supernatural, but I definitely remember that about Crowley. Another really great character. I think we've all sorts of great examples here. Yeah, it's a good one.
However, one area that audiences will always be judging is a character's sincerity. Whether a character throws a peasant out a window or gives a peasant a helping hand, audiences will always be trying to judge if the character is being honest with themselves as they do it. Remember how evil Woody tried to back out of his own actions when he got caught? What was worse than throwing Buzz out the window was denying it. We already talked about how that was too familiar for its own good, but it was also just plain disturbing. And it's because Woody was insincere. Because he wasn't just lying to his peers, he was lying to himself. When Bojack
Yeah, it's also that's a really good point to bring up. A really good point. Yeah. To write a lovable jerk, the jerkiness can't be like cruel and unreal, insincere. I think that was a really great way of putting it. Yeah. Yeah. Let's continue. Let's go.
goes
I like
on
that.
and on about how he wants to change, we gradually get a sense that he doesn't even mean it. He's lying to himself too. A character I meant to mention earlier, Livia Soprano, is one of the worst culprits of insincerity. One moment she's saying something despicably cruel, and the next moment she puts on a pitiful woe is me act, and in doing so is lying to herself. And even Tony Soprano, the character I just referred to as the quintessential lovable asshole, loses his charm when we realize he really doesn't want to change, but still puts on that act. It's crazy to admit, but I could appreciate all of the insane levels of violence and evil because he was distant and larger than life. But the moment it was clear he had been insincere, it was like he was a whole different character.
I feel like I've been stabbed in the heart.
We can see this same reaction in Dr. Melfi
I've never
too,
seen
when
the
she
comic book
finally
either.
sees his insincerity and that he was just using her to become a better criminal. She was no longer intrigued by him, she was mortified. Meanwhile, we don't ever get that insincerity with Kuzco or Batman. We get authenticity. Everything they do comes straight from the heart, and they never try to hide it. Like, even when Kuzco literally deceives Pacha, he's still sincere about his insincerity.
Oh, yeah, it all was a lie. Toodles!
Obnoxious, yes, but since he owns it, I can't help but respect the play. Together, the pairing of distance and sincerity tell us that you can't half-ass the ass. You need to full-ass them. Don't just lean into it, but kick the door down, embellish it, and embrace it. If you're gonna throw a guy out a window, make sure he's an old peasant too, and don't forget to dance after. But while
Exactly. You gotta be a little bit over the top about it. That's what makes it so funny. Yeah, that's the kind of like what's that thing called? Refuge and audacity. Where something's so completely over the top that you just can't really react to it. Pretty funny.
I think this is ultimately enough to write a lovable jerk, it raises an important question. How sustainable is this character type? In Arrested Development, Job could be Job from the first episode until the very last, and it would never get old. That's because lovable jerks are often hilarious, and all Arrested Development wants to do is make us laugh. But in a story with any sliver of drama or deeper intention, the lovable jerk archetype has a ticking lifespan. Eventually, either their lovability or their jerkiness will take control. For example, in Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, Jack Horner perfectly adheres to all my made-up principles of a lovable jerk. For starters, he creates distance with a larger-than-life level of jerk.
Oh yeah, that was another really, really great villain. The best kind of lovable jerk. Like the poor cricket stuck by him, hoping that he would change, right? But eventually, the poor cricket loses his patience and says, "You're just pure evil." And then the Jack's like, "Well, yeah. What did you expect?" Yeah, he's another great lovable jerk that you just love to watch because it's so fun.
Like when he uses his thugs as a bridge for his carriage. Kuzco would see that and take notes. But secondly, Jack is like the poster boy for shameless authenticity.
You're not gonna shoot a puppy, are you, Jack?
Yeah, in the face. Why?
He's clearly one of the most ruthless DreamWorks villains, yet he steals the show in almost every scene he's in. A perfect lovable jerk. But as funny as it is, The Last Wish is so much more than a comedy. And there's a couple characters we care more about than poor Jack Horner. When his jerkiness started to threaten the bigger picture, I was finally ready for his karma to catch up to him, and was happy to see his punishment fit his crimes. I mentioned it earlier too, but by the end of The Sopranos, Tony's jerkiness outweighed his lovability, and that's putting putting it very, very lightly. I guess skip 10 seconds if you don't want a Sopranos spoiler, but I think the ending was perfect because I needed to see Tony get what he deserved. But how do we get lovability to outweigh jerkiness? Well, we have to change where that lovability comes from, aka we have to cave and appeal to the audience's morals. Boo. Luckily, if we made the lovable jerks correctly, this is actually pretty easy to achieve. This is because of that authenticity we mentioned earlier. You'll have an infinitely easier time redeeming a character who was living truthfully because you simply have to introduce them to a new truth. If that sounded too philosophical, let me explain in terms of Lego Batman. At the start of his story, Lego Batman was an egomaniac. Yes, this ego made him a jerk, but in a perverted way it was lovable. Because he was so open and honest about his ego, it made him come off as harmless. It was almost as if he didn't know better. In the short term, this lovable jerk archetype worked great, but gradually we see Batman get exposed to a new truth. If he would just lower his ego and let people into his life, he would solve all his problems. This is what starts that timer I mentioned earlier. If Batman doesn't change soon, he threatens the bigger picture and will be remembered as just a jerk. And so Batman learns his lesson. He drops his ego just enough to let people into his life, and with that, he's no longer a lovable jerk because he isn't a jerk at all. But what about Kuzco, the lovable jerk who started this all? I actually think the writers
I think in a way that works for villains too. Returning to Handsome Jack as an example. Obviously he doesn't get redeemed. You defeat him in the end, but I think he still remains rememberable as a great villain because the comedy act drops halfway through the game, right? Yeah, I mentioned in the boss fight against Jack's daughter Angel, when you finally end her, Jack's tone shifts entirely. In the cutscene that follows after that boss scene, he kills off a major character, kidnaps another ally, and the whole tone of the game shifts dramatically. And in the quests that follow after, Handsome Jack is still funny. He still has the psychopath moments, but there's definitely a change to it too. There's a change. There's a lot more menace in there as well. That Jack isn't just messing with you anymore. That you've now made it personal because you got rid of his daughter at her request. In a way, that's also a bit of a new truth, right? That Jack realizes that his daughter is gone now. He has nothing left to lose except make this work and be the hero he claims he can be, even though he's no hero at all. The other strong belief that he is a hero, just trying to liberate Pandora from itself, right? That's a really good point there. Yeah, a new truth isn't always redemption. Sometimes it's doubling down on your evil too, right?
complete the lovable jerk arc in the most perfect way. Much like Lego Batman, we see Kuzco get exposed to a new way of life. When he instinctively saves Pacha, we see a little good in him, and that starts the same timer. Knowing that he does in fact have potential to be moral, only one of lovability and jerkiness can prevail. And so, in the climax of The Emperor's New Groove, he chooses between them. They spell out the decision clearly. On one hand, he can choose the potion over Pacha, which would define him as a jerk. On the other hand, or I guess hoof, he can choose Pacha over the potion, which would define him as lovable. And so, in the death of the lovable jerk, he chooses Pacha. So, I have no idea how many views this video has, and I have no idea if you liked it or not, but if something about this video seems remarkable to you, I actually have a behind the scenes video documenting the entire process of me making it. It's available on my Patreon, which is an amazing way to support the channel. You can also support the channel by liking this video, subscribing, and checking out Raid Shadow Legends. If you click the link in the description or scan my QR code, you'll get huge bonuses, including 2 free Epic Champions. As always, thanks for watching. Peace.
Yeah, okay, I thought that was a really great video there. As someone who's hoping to be a writer herself one day, I think it'll be pretty good. Yeah, oh my gosh, I really like that. I thought you brought up really good points here too, and that's a really great way of explaining it. You know, to create distance, embellish it, and then give them that one moment, introduce a new truth that starts the timer. Yeah, that's really insightful. I really like that. Yeah. Here, of course, before I forget, let's see you. Oh, you liked it. I'll link y'all the video. Give it a watch and a like yourself. We seem to have more videos like this on this channel, so I think I'll definitely go take a look at more videos myself sometime. See what other people are saying down here. Let's see here. Let's see what this person says. What makes lovable jerks so lovable is their complete lack of self-awareness. They are able to be shamelessly own their jerky actions because they see nothing wrong with what they're doing. It gives them an innocence that characters like the original Woody didn't have. That's another great way of putting it, I think. I think this person has a really good comment too. In a strange way, it is almost, innocent, right? You know, using Kuzco as an example, he was raised this way, right? He was raised to be completely spoiled, so he didn't know any better, did he? So that's kind of a way to endear someone, right? You know, where you think, oh, they don't know any better. Maybe they can still learn. And you know, over the course of the story, he does learn. So that gives you a bit of a happy hit, you know? Like, oh, they learned. That's awesome. Yeah, strangely, this innocence is what allows us to have empathy for them. In writing comedy, I found that more of a character lacks self-awareness, the funnier they are. Yeah, the scriptwriter is bringing the audience in on the inside joke that the jerk character is not privy to, and we can watch their horrible antics with something akin to amused pity, while we wonder how this character can be so clueless. It's a brilliant formula. I'm glad he did a video on it. That's also very true. I absolutely like that. Yeah, see what other people are saying down here. Something funny I noticed about trying to play a lovable jerk character in D&D was that some people refused to accept the good parts of the character because everyone expected there to be a catch to it. It didn't matter how many times their assumptions were disproven, they stuck to it and refused. Then, one day, my character is under the effects of some magic, and as a result, is more emotional than they usually are. They have a heart-to-heart with the party about the whole thing, and the party not only sticks to their position, but labels my character as a liar. So I'm thrown back by this, what we counted as lies, out of character, and realize my character has literally never lied to these people, while they have lied a ton to her. Imagine that. The jerk is the most honest one. It's gotta be rough if someone doesn't understand your character in D&D, right? But yeah, in a way, see, honesty is a virtue, right? So these jerks, they can twist that virtue a little bit, but that bit of virtue in them is like the seed of change, right? I actually really like that. Yeah, this was a really great video. I'm glad I decided to watch it. For any other aspiring writer out there, good notes to keep track of.